So to continue on our...
Sorry. Did you already start?
Blooper,
You started that quick?
Yeah, bro. One of the most common things that we see with all disorders in the office, all dysfunctions, if it's a shoulder issue, if it's a lower back issue, if it's a neck issue, is our thoracic spine or our mid-back. Unfortunately, our mid-back has a lot of stress that we don't even know about because of our daily posture. It could be us that have desk jobs, working on the desk and computer all day, but even outside of that, it's the cell phones, it's reading the book, it's just being in that rounded, hunched over position. And that leads to a lot of changes above and below that region without us even realizing it. So if you look here, Bob the skeleton here, he doesn't have that ergonomic setup, so he's forced to look down at his computer screen. Now, ergonomic desks aren't the most financially cheap thing to get, but if you can do anything to just elevate your computer screen, that way your eyes are up, you're gonna have a better likelihood of having a better posture. So our rounded posture at the computer screen, our rounded posture while on our phones and our Instagrams and our Snapchats and things like that, it just leads to a lot of problems above and below. So when we start to lose that functional mobility and capacity at that thoracic spine, we then start to create compensations in the cervical spine as well as the lumbar spine, and then even getting into the shoulder girdle. So to exaggerate, if we're very rounded and we have a lot of flexion or kyphosis in our thoracic spine, if those segments lose the ability to naturally extend and rotate, well, your body has to get things done. To compensate, you're going to start going into some upper cervical spine hyperflexion extension for movement, or hyperextension at that lower back as well. So when you get a rounded mid-back and a hyperextended lower back, a lot of times you're going to start getting into rib cage as well. Ribs start to get elevated, lack of diaphragmatic breathing is huge in most of our patients, and it's one thing that you lose without even realizing that you've lost it. We go from being natural belly breathers to becoming more upper cervical spine, upper rib cage, kind of what we call secondary respiration breathing. So making sure that we're also looking at how to reduce tension and irritation in the anterior chain. Probably gonna have to be seeing one of your primary cares, your chiropractor, your physical therapist, on different strategies to get in that, because it's a little bit more complex, but making sure that we're also attacking the breathing. So to summarize, we really need to regain this mobility here that we lose in our mid-back to preserve the health of our cervical spine and our lower lumbar spine. So we're gonna go over some strategies out in the gym on how to unlock your thoracic spine. All right, so once again, that mid-back, that thoracic spine is super important to have good functional mobility there, because it causes a lot of issues above and below when we lose that mobility. So one of my favorite exercises is what we call the cat-camel, and that's just getting into a quadruped position. What you're gonna do is engage here, get a nice solid core activation here. Push your spine towards the ceiling with a good inhale, dropping that down with a good exhale, okay? Really getting into that deep diaphragmatic breathing as much as you can, that good solid belly breathing. Take your time with this, really enjoy the stretch at each end range. You're gonna notice that getting into this position is a lot easier than getting in this position, and that's because going into this position is where we have lost that mobility. Going into the rounded, well, we're usually really rounded as it is, but getting into that extension is to be a little bit tougher. You might feel a little bit of discomfort, work through it, but 8 to 10 reps, really take your time with it, get some good breathing with it, to really work on that flexion extension capacity. But as I said, a lot of times we don't realize how important our thoracic spine is for rotation. So we need to make sure that we incorporate some rotational exercises to help mobilize that. So all I'm gonna do here is get into a laying position where I have hips at 90 degrees, knees at 90 degrees. With your bottom hand, you're gonna kinda lock into your top leg here to prevent your lower back and hips moving. All I'm gonna have you do is reach as far as you can, follow your hand with a good exhale at the end. Once again, 8 to 10 reps, make sure you get some good breathing with it. And what you'll notice is that if you don't lock this down here, you're gonna start getting more mobility, but you're also now moving segments that you don't wanna move with this exercise. So keeping this locked down to really open up that T-spine. Now you can also do that from a kneeling position. Makes it a little bit more dynamic. Same thing, you wanna keep this segment stable. You don't wanna be incorporating hip motion, but what we're gonna do here is we're going to then open up, just like that. And if you want to, you can add a little resistance band to make it a resisted exercise. Let me show you from here so you can see. Hip stays nice and stacked here, reaching out here, rotating with a good exhale to really make sure we're not only getting that extension mobility, but that rotational capacity for that thoracic spine. Overall, mobilizing that spine is really important for the joints, but you also have some muscles that are attached to the spine that cause a lot of aggravation and restriction as well. So what we're gonna do here, we got a double lacrosse ball. We actually took 2 lacrosse balls and put some tape around it. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this into the paraspinal muscles along the spine to really help reduce tension there. So right along the spine, sink down, let that kind of dig in. It might be a little uncomfortable depending on the surface you're in, but what we're gonna do here is now some overhead releases. And right now this is gonna help reduce that tension that we get in those paraspinal muscles from that long-term sitting. And so you can do a couple spots, slide up the ball, really trying to anchor down your rib cage, 8 to 10, and you can do your entire length of the spine here. And you'll notice that kind of dead center is gonna be where you're most bound up, and that one might make it a little bit more uncomfortable. So making sure that you are choosing the right surface to do this on. Obviously our gym floor here is gonna be more compressive into the spine compared to if you have a yoga mat down or if you're doing this on carpet. But a surface that's too soft, like in our RX pads, this will absorb too much of that energy and you're not gonna get an efficient release. So making sure that we unlock our thoracic spine is very, very important if we really wanna get full control and health at our cervical spine and lumbar spine. So try out these strategies, check with your chiropractor or PT, make sure these are right for you, and we'll see you at the office.